We have here a 2004 Volkswagen Passat with a 2.0 liter Bhw engine code TDI, and about a week ago the customer brought it to us for a laundry list of things that he wanted done, including a window fix, transmission service. But one of the things he was concerned with was a check engine light, and we suggested doing a diagnosis. If I remember correctly, it had a mass airflow sensor code and a boost related trouble code. I don't remember whether it was over boost or under boost at this point, but we saved the auto scan. I'll show you the auto scan from a week ago. And so what he wanted done was to clean the EGR valve. And we took the EGR valve and it was very carboned up, and we cleaned that up, cleaned the carbon out of it. Didn't do any testing, no diagnosing. We did that work at the customer's request. We suggested doing a diagnosis and he declined. Nothing against him. It's a logical thing to clean the EGR valve for those symptoms. But he paid for the work, whether it fixed it or not. He drove the car home, and literally the next day he drove it and the code started reoccurring. He also has a lack of power symptom, probably limp mode, because he did have a boost related trouble code. So let me get out the laptop and I'll show you the trouble codes that he had a week ago. When he brought the car back, I wanted to see what code was in it, and I went out and scanned it with a generic code checker, and it was a mass airflow sensor code that reoccurred. There was no boost code, and I cleared it yesterday. And then I did some driving, and it didn't. I probably drove it 5 miles, and the code did not reoccur, and his lack of power symptom did not reoccur. So we're probably going to have to do some driving, and we'll do some driving, see if we can get the symptoms to reoccur, and that because he has okayed the diagnosis now. So let's first I'll show you the trouble codes it had in here a week ago. Okay, here is the auto scan from about a week ago, and you can see there is a 16683 or P0299 boost pressure regulation control range not reached, and then 16485 mass airflow sensor P0101 implausible signal. Now I want to point out that P0101 quite frequently is a bad mass airflow sensor, so we have to take that into account in our diagnosis. Let's go drive it and get some graphs. Okay, we're graphing the mass airflow sensor here, and our green is our specified and yellow is actual, and as you can see, this is mostly a wide open throttle pull. It's really over reporting how much airflow is actually happening. That could be due to overboost, and so we'll take a look and graph boost and see what happens there. Well, I've done some driving and I've graphed boost, and it seems pretty normal. You can see there the green being specified and the yellow being actual, that boost comes up there where it belongs and it's under good control the whole time. So it's definitely not an overboosting condition. Airflow is being measured as it goes into the intake manifold. If EGR is supposed to be going into the intake manifold and it isn't, for instance it's blocked or with carbon, or where it's not the EGR valve isn't opening, then the computer will expect less airflow, because that EGR gases are supposed to be going into the intake, but there will be more airflow coming through the mass airflow sensor because the EGR gases aren't going into the intake because the stuck EGR valve or something along those lines. So that may be what we have. We'll have to check into the EGR system, and we'll go from there. Okay, during our test drive we did have the mass airflow sensor P0101 reoccur. We're going to try and run the output test for EGR. And activate. So we're watching the duty cycle, and we should expect to see a change there when the duty cycle changes. And there is some minor change. In the mass airflow sensor when the duty cycle changes there, about 200 milligrams per stroke. And you can hear a tone change in the engine when that happens. At least I can. I don't know whether you can on camera or not. So that shows me the EGR valve is working at least a little bit. Okay, once again along the lines of the EGR valve not opening, so therefore the mass airflow sensor is seeing more airflow than it should. In other words, over-reporting the amount of airflow. Along those lines, I was thinking about doing voltage tests here, but I don't really know that the change that we had on the milligrams per stroke during the output test for the EGR was enough, because I don't have every car memorized. But what I do know is it was going from 0 command on the EGR valve to a bigger command, and the airflow was changing. So that kind of shows me that the EGR valve can close and open just a little bit. It might need to open bigger, but it seems to me that it's able to close and open just a little bit. Now, along that line of thinking, we'd have to worry that this tube might be clogged, although that's not real common on TDIs at all. It'd be more common for somebody to put a plate in there and block it and maybe cause a code or an airflow problem, but I really don't think that's what we have here. It'd be real easy to pull this pipe and inspect to see if it was blocked or not, but once again, during the output test, the tone of the engine changed, and so that indicates that exhaust gas is flowing into the intake while the computer was commanding it on. So at this point, I really think that this is working. The tube is okay, and I'm starting to look at the mass airflow sensor. Mass airflow sensor is definitely over-reporting. On other TDIs, I've graphed hundreds of them on mass airflow sensors. I'm pointing here because the mass airflow sensor is under here. Once again, another cover we have to remove in order to access something. But I've graphed hundreds of mass airflow sensors. Very rarely do they over-report the way this one's over-reporting. Maybe it's as simple as a bad mass airflow sensor, but the code that's triggering actually says implausible, and that means that the computer sees the signal it's having as not correct. The signal isn't dropping out. The signal isn't stuck at one location or stuck at one reading. The signal isn't non-existent. It's actually reading something that changes with RPM and airflow. So if anything, maybe the mass airflow sensor is skewed one direction. But how to determine that? That's kind of hard to determine. Okay, I've got this cover out so we can do some quick basic electrical checks on this mass airflow sensor. I really don't think these electrical checks are going to show us anything, because the mass airflow sensor is working. We can see it working on the graph. When we floor it, we see large airflow. When we don't floor it, we see less airflow. You know, the graph is very clear on that. Plus, when I ran the output test, it saw minor changes in airflow when the EGR valve had opened a little bit. So these checks are almost pointless, but I'm going to do them real quick anyway, because we are getting a mass airflow sensor trouble code. So I'm going to hook my lead to my meter. Now, from memory, one of these will have 12 volts, and one of them will have a reference voltage of 5 volts, and then one of them will be a ground, and the last one will be the signal return, and the signal return should fluctuate with airflow. So I'll back probe this one. Oh, better turn the car on. Okay, that one's our 12 volts. And then the next one It's a brown wire, probably ground, and showing very little voltage, so I'd say yes, that's probably our ground. And then that one's our 5-volt reference, and this last one is our signal return. So it's showing 1 volt with no airflow, because obviously the engine isn't running. Let me go ahead and start it, and we'll see what if it changes with airflow, but just by starting it. And it changed to 1.5, approximately 1.6 volts just by starting it. So obviously airflow is higher, so the voltage changed. Now let me rev the engine a little bit and we'll see. We'll assume airflow is going to change, so the voltage should change there also. Now I couldn't see that, but I'm going to pause the video and re-watch the footage to see what it showed. Okay, I just re-watched that, and as I was giving it gas, I purposely stair-stepped it, the RPM up. So I gave it a little gas, and then a little more gas, and then a little more gas, and the voltage changed with each amount of RPM that I gave it, culminating in about 3.3 volts. Obviously, I can't just floor it and let the engine rev like crazy. Sitting here in the bay, we don't want to over rev the engine, but obviously the mass airflow sensor is at least working. Whether or not it's skewed to show a higher level of voltage than it should, I just can't know that. I can't memorize every mass airflow sensor on every car that I work on. Okay, I guess we're going to kind of need to change directions. I've kind of been forgetting there was a low boost code, so any boost leak can cause the low boost code and cause the mass airflow sensor to show more airflow than expected. But we drove the car thoroughly when it was here before. We didn't hear any boost leaks, and usually a boost leak will make some kind of noise, but we didn't hear anything, and the customer wasn't complaining of any hissing noises or anything. But we're going to smoke test the intake track, including all the boost pipes, and see if that shows us anything. We smoke tested the intake track, including the intercooler and all the boost piping for boost leaks, and didn't see anything, and wasted a bunch of time on it. Chased our tail for a little while, but I remember that in the past sometimes boost leaks are restrictive or a tight squeeze. The smoke machine doesn't have enough air pressure to push through the boost leak in order to show us the problem. So what you do on a turbo car like that is to actually pressurize it with more pressure than the machine will give us. So we just basically put air pressure in there. And so what I've done is I've put this rig in here in order to seal this off. We have some fittings to seal these off, but this is bigger than what we have. We don't have anything that fits that. We need one of those easy intake pneumatic ones that expand in there. But we don't have one. I probably need to order one. But the process of finding a boost leak, usually you would take and look over all the tubing. There's not boost in here, but that goes into the turbo and then through the turbo to pressurize the intercooler and all the boost piping. And there's a boost pipe down there, and what you generally do is you have a helper race the engine, and that builds up some boost pressure in there, and usually you can hear it hissing if that's the case. That did nothing for us on this car, and you look it over real good for oil and slime, and these boost pipes were really tight and dry. You can see that boost pipe over there. That's the intercooler right there, and this boost pipe is nice and dry. We looked it over real good. Didn't see anything that raised any red flags. So smoke testing didn't show us anything. So we did this, and we were able to find the problem with this. I just wanted to show you how we found the problem. Cameron, can you give me a hand? I will get some help from Cameron to apply air pressure to this, and we'll listen to it together. Can you grab your blow nozzle? And I need you to blow in the end of this hose. And what you need to do is watch this red thing, and it'll flex outward. If you just nail it, it's going to blow it right out.
Okay.
So you need to control the air pressure that you're putting in there and watch it flex outward. You need to pressurize it with it flexing outward some,
Okay.
but not too much. Okay, go ahead. So Cameron is applying some air. Okay, go ahead and pull some air in there. Okay, this is what we did to identify the problem. We're putting air pressure in there, and you can see that's bulging out because there's a little bit of pressure in there. And then we follow along the tubes in order to listen for any type of hissing noise. And as he does this, you can just barely hear some hissing right here. And I put my hand back in there. I can't really feel anything, but I can definitely hear it. I don't know if you're going to pick that up on camera or not, but there's some hissing there. A little bit more. Just like that, a little bit more. Plus our furnace is running right now. It's probably not the best situation to hear a boost leak like that, but I've already conclusively identified it. There's definitely a boost leak right here in this hose, and we'll pull that out of there and take a look. Well, I have this boost tube out, so you can see this leak much better. There's the split in the hose, and obviously that was causing our boost leak, and extra air that the mass airflow sensor was showing is leaking out through this hole. So we'll call the customer and get the okay to replace this. This is a fairly expensive item from the dealership, and if the customer okays the new part, we'll get one installed on the car and update the video then. Okay, we got the new hose in here. There's the part number if you need it, and we'll be putting this thing in. And we'll go road test it and see how it works. Okay, we've taken this Passat on a road test and we've graphed the mass airflow sensor, and you can see there that the yellow line, which is actual, is very much closer to specified, and that's a good waveform. That's very typical of what this car is doing and what I've seen on other cars, so I'm pretty confident that the boost leak is going to fix the mass airflow sensor problem. As I said, the mass airflow sensor was showing over reporting, and so I'm confident with the new tube that now it's not going to be over reporting. We'll graph boost real quick and see what it looks like. Okay, we have returned from the road test. We're back in the shop now, and as you can see, boost control is normal, but we kind of had good boost control before. Well, let's check codes, make sure the mass airflow sensor code didn't reoccur. Obviously, we don't want the boost code to reoccur either. All right, nothing there. This was a slightly interesting diagnosis for me, since the mass airflow sensor code would reoccur and reoccur, but it did have a boost code when it came in, but the boost code wouldn't reoccur. Also, here's another interesting thing, is I've had that exact same tube split before, and it would hiss like crazy. You could hear it hissing, and I don't remember it triggering a mass airflow sensor code. Maybe it did, but I know it triggered a boost related code. I'm sure I've replaced 2 or 3 of those in the past, and never was the mass airflow sensor the prevailing problem. It was the boost related problem and a hissing noise. If you've enjoyed this video or learned anything from it, be sure and click the like button. And if you want to financially donate to the continued production of these videos, visit my website at www.kansascitytdi.com and find the donate icon. And if you want to watch some more of my videos, click that right there. And there's one right there. And don't forget to subscribe.